Zach Bass. I'm your airport director. I've been at the airport 4 years, 3 years in the director's position. Prior to that, I was 9 years in the United States Air Force. Basically, I did not fly. I did business operations for the airport, which you'll find out fits very well into what an actual airport does. I guess, I was in Wyoming, based there at F.E. Warren for a while. I taught at the University of Washington for a while for the Air Force. I got an all-expenses-paid trip to the Middle East, which was fun. And basically, I have 3 children, and my wife is from Bend, so that's what brought us back here originally. So a little bit about your airport. I can get this. I need to be closer. Okay, well, all right, this is behind a little bit. So some quick facts. Right now we are the 4th largest airport in Oregon commercially. There's 2 ways to differentiate between what you call the size of an airport. For any airport, GA or general aviation and commercial, it's based on operations, landings and takeoffs. We are about 95,000 operations a year. Putting that into perspective, Bend Airport, as a GA airport, is actually around 150,000 operations. And Bend is the 3rd busiest airport in the state for landings and takeoffs. But we're the 4th largest commercial, and we're starting to catch up pretty closely with Medford, and we're not far behind Eugene. This year, 915,000 people will go through our airport. We own, when I say the airport, it's the city, but it is also specific to the airport, about 2,500 acres. If you didn't know this, we own about 1/4 of all land inside the Redmond UGB. 500 of those acres is outside our fence. For an example, Peterson Cat is actually airport land. Give you an idea of kind of our reach a little bit. This is going to be behind. Okay. Right now, actually 50 flights a day, 25 in, 25 out commercially. This summer it'll probably jump up to closer to 54, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Right now we have 7 nonstop destinations. We'll be adding Chicago direct in June, which will push us to 8 destinations nonstop. We have about an $8.5 million operating budget, although our overall budget with capital is closer to 20 to 25, depending on the year and the grants involved. We deal a lot with grants. I won't get into all this, but we have $37 million in open grants between federal, state, and regional. Land inside the fence. Hopefully, I don't know if you can see this. Terminal, south side general aviation, north side general aviation, and the Redmond Air Center for the United States Forest Service, which is our biggest tenant. You want to come up here and just push the button? You can try to use it. I don't know. Airport.
He's good for something.
Yeah, but he figured out what Travis was good for.
Land outside the fence. We own all of the the old Juniper Golf Course. Everything basically on both sides except for the caves and until you get into the airport park off of Airport Way. See? Maybe it wasn't just me.
It's a work in progress.
Apparently. Yeah, she's funny. Okay, you should just go to the next place.
Remember, you gotta leave early.
I know. Right? My slides. I could just talk, but then I get rambling. And
So what are the colors? What's light blue?
that is actually the current zoning, which is M1.
Yeah, M1.
Correct. Green is OSPR. That's mostly what we are. And then the purple is a C5 commercial.
Tourist commercial.
But we are looking right now, this was all done in a master plan in 07, 08 that fell through. What we're planning on doing with the rezone is to make everything airport compatibility zone. One thing when we talk about our land is back in 1946, all this orange area, after World War II, we used to be a World War II B-17 and P-38 base. With the end of World War II, what happened with most of airports that were owned by the government was they created the FAA, or the beginning of the FAA. The government gave all these airports to the FAA, who then gave it to municipalities, ports, cities, etc. for like $1. But when they gave it to them, it comes with called an FAA deeded land. So it's property that's deeded. So the FAA has a lot of control over what occurs on this land. Now, all these different colors is either the land we've had in the past or what we have now and how it was acquired. And depending on the color and how it was acquired, it really restricts us on what we can do with it. It's a difficult thing to sell airport land, and it's even difficult to get non-aviation stuff built on it depending on where it lays. Next. Employment growth. Just over 100,000 employments, people getting on the plane in 1996. We are this year going to hit 450,000 employments. Within the last 5 years, we've grown 80% in customers, which is phenomenal. Oh. Oh, now you're getting. Oh. Now they're going to see all my revenue. Oh no. Just sit there. Where our passengers come from, we are owned by the city of Redmond. We're a Redmond entity. We use Redmond's fair faith and credit to the city to get lower interest rates. Like, look who our passengers are. 72% of our passengers are from Bend and Sun River, only 11% from Redmond, a few percentage from Sun Sisters, and the rest from the outlying area. Financials, how do we work? Since 1946, the airport has never taken tax dollars money from Redmond. So we are with an enterprise fund. We basically are self-sustaining. We always have been. Now, the interesting thing I like to point out is that even though, let's say, this year we make $1 million for some reason, the city is not allowed to take that money and to put it into streets or police. The FAA requires that it has to be a service to the airport, and it's called revenue diversion. So even though the airport might be doing very well, you might have heard about, we need more police force. The airport cannot help substitute for that cost. The interesting thing is that the airport's failing, the city can't give us money. I know, for me anyway, it's good. We run terminal and airfield, which I'll talk about, is a fee recovery. Everything that we spend in those two categories are passed on to our tenants through what you'll see on the next slide in our revenues. Basically, passenger facility charge, landing fees, usage fees, all of that kind of stuff is actually passed on to help pay for those two funds. Now, our biggest fund, though, is our general fund, which is not passed on, but it allows us to lower the cost to the airlines and the other funds. And our biggest piece right now is parking. Last year made $3.4 million. I'll talk in a second about the raise in parking fees that just occurred January 1st. Airport projects over the next 8 years, sorry about the formatting. So this is what's occurring over the next 8 years. A lot of this is occurring because of the growth we're seeing. So go ahead, I won't go through all these. We just finished reconstruction of 1129. If you're hearing more noise over the city than you thought you did this summer, it's because that runway is up and running now. Next, terminal ramp expansion. Next summer, $700 million, we're going to add 2 mainline spots for aircraft. Our ramp holds 9 aircraft. Every night there's 9 aircraft out there. So we are completely full, not only on customer parking in some situations, but also on aircraft parking for commercial. We'll add 2 more this summer. SRE building, our ops building on the north side, we have a 7,000 square foot building right now for our operations. We are going to be building in the fall, start the construction of a $13 million, 40,000 square foot operations building. Next. We're going to rehab our taxiways next. Relocate. Keep going. Terminal expansion is going to be in 3 to 4 years. You're going to see us double the size of our holding, what they call a hold room or a wait where you're waiting. We're also going to be looking at jet bridges. So,
Jet bridges?
Walk in up top.
wow. Yes. Next one. I'll mention the ARF because I don't know. Central Oregon has about 7 GA airports in about a 30-mile span. We are the only one that has a 24-hour, what they call airport firefighting apparatus on site all the time. It's manned. So if you ever get a chance to go out there and you want to see a really cool firefighting vehicle, it's different than other vehicles because it's made to put out airplane fires. But we'll be getting a new one of those in a few years, and they're about $1 million a piece. So whenever you hear, for example, we had a person that didn't have their landing gear go down, and they weren't actually flying to Redmond, they were flying to Bend, Sisters. But anytime there's an issue, we're going to see all those planes come to us instead of go to the other airports because of that capability. I won't go into the infrastructure stuff. We will be expanding our parking lot this summer for 300 spots, and then looking at a new off-site parking lot in the future for another 1,000 spots to keep up with growth.
Where would the off-site spot be?
It's a good question. The expansion one is actually going to be kind of off of our current employee lot. The off-site, we're not sure yet. We'll run a site analysis when the time comes. So just in the next 8 years, you saw all those projects that are coming up. This is how it breaks down on who's paying for it. $85 million in projects. The airport, between our general debt, when we bond out money, and our cash, will be having to come up with $37 million. I think it's $39 million ourselves. And so that's why you saw the parking rates kind of go up this year. It's to help fund this and to keep us financially sustainable. So we went from, right now we pay every year about $2.4 million in debt service. In the next, by 2024, that's going to more than double to $5.6 million in debt service. So when we talk to council about parking fees, we basically show them what's our fund balance, basically cash on hand. And we project out for 10 years with all these projects. We project out for manning needs. We project out for our potential growth and employments over the next 10 years. And what we really come up with is how sustainable is our cash in the future. Without the parking fee increase, you can tell by the time we do the terminal expansion that we're going to go into the negative before too long after that point. So at this point, we told council we're going to need to do the parking fees now to help make sure that we can fund ourselves for the future in these terminal expansions especially. So that's why you're going to see, if you go park out there, instead of $10 a day, it's now $15 a day for this reason. Now, air service. New Chicago Direct, it's a red eye. Seasonal for now, 5 months long, starts June 6th. It's on an E175 76-seater. They're nice. If you haven't flown on one of the new E175s, it's kind of like a small 737. So it should be good. It's almost at the length of its actual capacity because it's a smaller jet. We have a new Airbus 320 mainline starting also on June 6th to add an additional route to Denver. They bring us up to 3 daily. Now, keep going back. I got more. Sorry. We have 8 daily flights going to Seattle starting this summer. Now this is interesting because Delta stepped into the marketplace about 1.5 years ago with 2 daily flights. Alaska Airlines already does 5. And if you don't read about aviation, what's going on is Delta and Alaska Airlines are fighting for Seattle. So if you fly Alaska a lot, you're probably getting a lot of things about $39 tickets to Seattle, $49 tickets to Seattle. It's good for customers, it scares us. Because our market really can't, based on load factors, really can't support 8 daily flights to Seattle. But we don't have a lot of say in that, so they're battling it out. If you need to go to Seattle, it's a good time to go based on fares. Yeah?
Very close airplane. Do we yet have radar coverage under 6,000 feet?
We do not have local radar. Seattle Center does.
Why are we not?
It's a good question. We actually have a radar system on the field. We do not have the board to see the radar in our tower. And we're working through congressional means. We've actually just got on the priority list for a radar display in the tower, working with Walden, Berkeley, and Wyatt, truthfully, all 3. But we are still do not know when that might occur. It's about a $4 to $5 million thing to put into place and then maintenance.
From the standpoint of availability to the guy who's flying the airplane, it's a well spent $4 or $5 million.
I would
From
love
a
to.
safety standpoint, it is. From the ability to get in and something less than casual weather, it seems to me that the radar before, I know this is opinion, and I apologize. No, I don't apologize.
I think we're in agreement.
To spend 4 or 5 million for a radar facility that gets you coverage under 6,000 feet ATL is a whole lot more better spent than expanding a parking lot.
So, you're right, but we have no, it's actually a radar, the radar is owned and operated by the FAA separately from the airport.
True.
So it's not only just the money to, let's upgrade the radar and to get a radar display, it has to go through the FAA, and they will not allow us to pay for something, and then who owns it, and there's a lot of operational questions, but we are pushing hard for the radar display right now.
FAA has refused?
Well, we're hoping to get them to upgrade the radar, and then give us the radar display in the tower.
Okay.
They haven't refused, but they haven't accepted our need as of now.
Probably ridiculous.
Yes, it has. 5 daily flights to San Francisco, 2 to Salt Lake and LA, 1 to Phoenix, and then 5 to Portland every day this summer. So fly. Don't fly. Don't go to Portland. Fly. Next. I'll give you a little bit on air service. I don't know what time is it. I kind of talked Ben.
12:26.
So here's what's going on over the last 20 years when people talk about, well, what about new places to go, new airlines? In the last 20 years, all of these, you might remember Continental, AirTran, Northwest, TWA, US Airways, consolidation has occurred in the market. So right now, those 5 players up top control 86% of all commercial traffic in the US. We have American, Delta, United, and Alaska. Southwest only flies large hubs to large hubs right now. Next slide. What is occurring though in the market, and is actually beneficial to us, is they are getting rid of planes with seats less than 50. So what's happening is they're not building new planes that hold 30 people. They want to move from 50-seaters even up to the 76-seaters, the 100-seaters. And what's occurring is anybody that cannot, what's the word I'm looking for? Justify or support a 76-seater, 100-seater, they're starting to lose air service. Klamath Falls, Pendleton, the North Bend is having issues. So right now, if you're not big enough to support those larger aircraft, you're basically losing service. Now for us, we can support them. So what's been good for us is you can see a 47% increase in those larger aircraft. So that's why you're seeing less of the 50-seater CRJ 200s, and you're seeing more of the 76-seaters and even the main lines that are coming out. Our growth, we've talked about it, but compared even to Oregon, we're much higher. Our fares, people ask about how expensive we are. Truthfully, when you put us up against regional airports of our size or even larger, we're right in the sweet spot with them. If you drive to Portland right now, depending, I think overall, you're paying about $40 less per ticket. We actually only have what they call, we have a very strong retention rate. So people that fly out of Central Oregon, about 71%, 72% fly Redmond. We only lose about 20, 25% up to Portland, which is actually a pretty good retention rate. Eugene loses, close to 60% to Portland. So thank you.
I think it's the mountains that you can pay for that, not us.
The mountains help.
Yeah.
We do see an uptick in winter.
Yeah.
Now, how do we get, I get a lot of questions on how we get air traffic, or how we get new air service. And basically what we do is we kind of, if you've heard me say this before, we basically start trying to date the airlines. It's almost like you start a relationship and you're like begging the airlines to date Central Oregon and the Redmond Airport. And we do this through a few ways. One is every year we go to the headquarters of all of the airlines. And we have a 1-hour meeting, 1 hour. So I fly to Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Seattle. And so we fly over there. It's a 1-hour meeting where basically we pitch Central Oregon. We're great, look at our growth, et cetera, et cetera. Why don't you think about giving us this service or increased frequency? And they say, oh, you're nice, we like you, but we don't know if we can right now. We have someone else that we want to date to. So every year we do that. And then we also have speed dating conferences. It's basically that. And you'll see a picture here of Jumpstart. where instead of it's a 1-hour meeting, it's 20-minute meetings. And you'll have Alaska sitting here, and we show up and we do the exact same thing, but it's a 20-minute meeting. And then the time's up, there's a big timer, like speed dating, and I get up and I walk over to American Airlines.
Speed dating.
Same thing. And we do that every year over and over and over again. And for us, we've done very well. Not, I think also because the region has grown so much and we can show that the revenue is there for the airlines. But we also start to build that relationship year over year with those individuals that are doing network planning for the airlines. So it's not something in the sense of, you know, I want to go to San Jose, what are you doing to make that happen? Well, it's years in the process. Same time, I didn't ask Delta to put flights into Seattle. Never even knew about it until they came up and said, we're doing this. And because we're a public use airport, we cannot deny them, even though we might think it's bad for the market.
I guess that's my question. I don't understand if they're using larger and larger airplanes up to 100 seats, and there's more service. How does this work for the airlines? Or for us, for that matter?
In which way, what do you mean works?
Well, how is that economical or practical? Larger airlines, but still the same customer base?
No. So our customer base is growing here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're unique in some ways to where we found the airlines, they always hesitate to add too much capacity or seats to a market because they worry about, you know, it's the same base.
Empty planes.
Yeah, load factor,
Yeah.
right? And so, but what we found in Central Oregon, surprisingly, is they just keep adding capacity and Central Oregonians keep filling it. And I don't know if that's because the in-migration that we're seeing and the growth we're seeing, or just, you know, business is growing so much that we're seeing more business travel. But even though we've added 26% increase in seats in the last year or two, we only saw like a 5% decrease in load factor. So somebody's putting more butts in seats. Again, thank you. Yep. And a lot of people ask, well, how do you pitch a new thing to the airport? I mean, to the airlines, and I talked about the process of talking to them, but one thing we bring up is, it's a little Big Brother-ish, but we don't know names. But if you leave Bend and you go to Portland and then your final destination is Chicago, I know you going to Chicago. So I have all the data on who flies to our airport and where their final destination is. So what we can do is we can bring that together and we can show, add Chicago, because I know there's 22 people a day flying from here with the end destination in Chicago. And then we take a percentage of that. It's a big whole thing I don't understand. But basically you can tell the airlines you're probably going to have at least guaranteed 10 people on a plane that'll take the direct over going through a different destination. So that's one lever we have to show them that it will be profitable, there will be people in the seats based on actual data. So as you can see, Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, Phoenix, and so we're missing San Diego as our next one. Vegas is in there. We already have Denver, and then we kind of start moving down.
That was
Who was
fast.
first? Ann? I think you were first.
So I'm curious if the master planning effort preserved the potential of the second runway in the future.
Third runway?
Third, well, the second parallel to the main.
Yes. The master plan right now shows a 3,000 foot extension on our main runway towards the fairgrounds. And it also does show a third runway, although truthfully, we're not going to need a third runway, even if we grow the way we're growing for 40 years, 30 years. I mean, San Diego right now has one runway, 250,000 operations, and one runway. We have 95,000 operations on two. So, yeah.
In the news lately has been this increased partnership by Leading Air, Leading Aviation, whatever it's called. Can you give a little more detail on that?
Yeah, so a Leading Edge Jet Center just entered a 25, potentially 30-year contract with them to offer what's called fixed-based operator services on the airfield. They do all the fueling, they do all the maintenance, depending on who needs it. They have avionics. They do the towing. They're the ones that move aircraft when they're disabled. And basically they work hand in hand with everything on the airport. So for this 25 to 30 years, they're gonna be required to put in a $5 million corporate hangar of 24,000 square feet, and then a brand new fixed-based operator building, at least 6,000 feet. So one thing that people kind of get worried about those long-term leases on airports is, just to put it out that there's no monopoly. Anybody can walk in and try to be a fixed-based operator based on FAA rules, among other things. So there can always be competition in the future too, if that answers that.
We flew to Puerto Vallarta in November. We met folks from Vancouver Island who live near the Comex Airport, and they were very proud that they have a weekly seasonal flight from Comex to Puerto Vallarta. What are the chances of Redmond attracting a seasonal flight?
Do you know which airline that was? Spirit, Allegiant? No, that wasn't Allegiant. Was it Spirit, Frontier?
It was a Canadian
Okay,
airline.
Canada Air. I'd love to call
It
ourselves.
might have been WestJet.
Canada Air and Alaska are in a syndicate, I think.
I
think they're-
they
yeah.
changed some, yeah, they might be. I'd love to call ourselves an international airport. I think that'd be really cool. When we start looking at those low-cost carriers, they usually travel from really northern bases to really southern. So they're looking more at like snowy Michigan, Wisconsin, and they usually fly out of small airports. And the reason they do that, even Allegiant does this, is the reason they do that is the fees are so low. The airport's so happy to have somebody there that they usually don't charge them that much. But we would always be open to that. Right now, nobody's really interested. We have talked to Frontier and Spirit about future growth, but we've never been approached or have approached anybody about a Mexican flight.
Is lack of customs an obstacle?
No, usually if they do add an international flight, I believe there's a requirement that they have to add a certain amount of customs. Medford is actually an international airport, even though they get to call themselves that because there's a once-a-week, my understanding is there's a once-a-week cargo flight from China that lands there. So they get to call themselves an international airport, which just bothers me. And I have to get their director on our time about it.
You mentioned they're trying to get larger aircraft in here. The 737, I think, is 130-something passengers.
30 to 160, depending on
Yeah,
configuration.
well, anyway, how large an aircraft can conveniently land here? What's the upper range of aircraft that could come in?
That's a loaded question, but a good one. We've had 747s.
The president's been here, President Bush.
Yeah.
C5A. We are a Cat 3 air, I don't need to get into that. Because basically what deters larger aircraft from flying in here is not because of the size, but because of the weight. So because of our altitude, and especially because of our heat in the summer, the runway's not long enough to have a large weighted aircraft take off. So you might see a 737-800 in here, but it's not flying fully loaded and fully fueled to Chicago. It's flying to Seattle, where it might take on a quarter of the fuel. So it's more the weight of the aircraft until you get into the really big aircraft.
Air traffic controllers and TSA under the current government shutdown. Is that affecting us locally?
At this point, it's not. Our air traffic controllers, for whatever reason, they're contracted, and they're still being paid. So I don't know what the relationship is between their company and the FAA, but they're contracted to air control tower. So they're still being paid, no impact. TSA is not being paid. And right now, we have not had any kind of a blue flu or people call out, but we're watching it, and if this continues, then we're gonna start to see issues. At some point, they just can't work for free. But right now, we're not seeing any delays. We are reaching out to the financial institutions on helping with loans, bringing them food. You know, jokingly, we gave them a box of paydays the other day.
We've got Sheep's Candy.
I don't know if they found it as amusing as us, but, so right now, there's no effect with TSA.
Any discussions on Vegas?
Always, we meet with Allegiant at all these conferences, and we meet with them. The problem with Allegiant is
They want to sell the package.
the package sold, but they're also, it's the fee structure that they're looking for. And they asked us, if your fees look like this, then that's what we're looking for to come in. And What that would mean though is a loss of almost $1 million in revenue from us, from the other airlines, because we have to treat them all the same. So it doesn't make sense for us right now to do that. And as I mentioned before, they love small airports to those southern hubs because they're not paying much on a per turn cost. We'd like to have them. Medford still has it, Eugene has it, and their fees are much higher than ours. So in some ways we wonder why. But we're working. We keep talking to them.
One or two more, we're almost out of time.
Yeah.
What prevents us from extending the runway to the east, southeast?
Highway 26
That's not
to the east or the west?
to the west, to the east.
You're right, it was the highway, the ditch. the
Highway
town.
26, there's county land, BLM land, COID. I don't own any of it. And then we own all the land that is needed to come west. And when we run our noise contours, it doesn't change anything, right? So truthfully, I know there's been some noise complaints lately with, the increase in operations we're seeing, but actually these larger jets are quieter than the past. So the noise is actually less, and you're hearing more of it because there's more operations. If that makes sense.
Well, irrigation ditches and highways are minimal obstacles to extension of a runway. And going to the east or southeast, as the case may be, you're not going over populated areas. You don't have the noise problem. You don't have the risk of aircraft landing on a house. So my question is still, why aren't we extending runway 01?
And I realize that we run all of those scenarios, and there really is no danger to extending the runway to the west, 3,000 feet, which is, we already own.
To the east.
I'm saying, but when we actually run the side-by-side analysis, it doesn't make sense in really any aspect to go to the east instead of the west. It's actually much harder to go to the east.
You've got a town to the west and you've got fair land to the east.
In 5, which is this runway, is only 11% of takeoffs and landings occurs from 5. Most things are taking off from 5 to 2-3 and out over the east. And then you're mostly seeing over the town, you're seeing traffic from 11-9, which is our crosswind runway. It was all done in our master plan. We can talk more about it. I can give you all the specs if you want, the noise contours, and I'm happy to. I like talking about it, as you can tell. But we did run full analysis. Our master plan was about $1 million operation to put this together for our plans over the next 20 years. And we really looked into that with all of the stakeholders in the region.
I like where you're going to, Dick, but hey, pick our battles. But, the airport, Redmond Airport is the gem of Central Oregon. I always called it the second most important economic engine, just because if you can't get in and out, then what else is there? And I want to thank you for being the manager of the airport. I think you're the right person at the right time to lead us moving forward. So any help you need to keep your vision going, let us know, and we'll all support you with that.
Compliments will get you everywhere.
Helicopters. Helicopters are kind of a pain. They're noisy, and we put up with their life and air link because, well, they do good service. But I don't want to hear any more of them talk about it, helicopters.